hjørnet.
Hello and welcome to Udstødt, a Danish name for this fellowship. My name is Frank Flemming Jensen, and the past 4 or 5 years I have been producing over 160 podcasts and YouTube videos about Jehovah's Witnesses and mostly interviewing people so they can help the so-called PMOs that are inside Jehovah's Witnesses organization, physically in, mentally out. But why don't they just leave the organization? I hear that a lot from listeners who don't know so much about Jehovah's Witnesses. And the short answer is because of the Watchtower organization's use of disfellowshipping and shunning people who just want to leave and live their own normal worldly life. And there are many other things you can criticize them for, and that is why I run this channel. And as you can hear, Danish is not my first language. 99 of the videos and podcasts I produce are in Danish, of course, because that's my mother tongue. But this episode will be 100% in English. So please, feel free to support my little Danish channel here, not by money in any way. I do this 100% voluntary, but support my work by subscribing to my channel, like and share and all that, so that more people, especially in Denmark and other Scandinavian countries that do understand me, they can benefit from the information in this channel. So, the last weekends of July here in Denmark, there were 4 district conventions. And according to JW.org, there are approximately 14,500 Jehovah's Witnesses. And then, of course, they have Bible studies and people interested. So there should come around 20,000 people. And in one of those regional conventions, there were a protest arranged by the famous goat-like personality, Jonas from Norway, and that is our brotherland here in Scandinavia. Goat-like and his wife, Malgorzat, were there, and also 2 people from Australia, Lara and Stephen Onthank. They came all the way to Hillerød. That is a city approximately 40 kilometers north of Copenhagen. And these people came only to protest. And I would say in a very friendly way. When you hear the word protest, you are imagining people standing there with a lot of signs and screaming at the people. But no, it was a very friendly and, could I say, loving protest. And they were waving to the Jehovah's Witnesses and have a nice convention. See you next year. And so it was very, very interesting to follow them. So they were there because they, of course, had some critics, were critical on Jehovah's Witnesses. And one of them is they are not living up to the basic principles of human and especially children's rights. So they had some banners writing that. But I went up there to talk with them and to ask them why they spend so much money and so much time doing this, and a lot of other questions. It was a very good day I spent with them, and they were also sweet and nice and kind to be with. I'm sorry, after I went home, I interviewed Goat-like and Lara and also Stephen, but I did not interview Goat-like's wife, Malgorzat. It just slipped my mind when I was there, but she would have been very interesting to interview also and hear her story, because she hasn't grown up in Jehovah's Witnesses. She only knows about it through Jonas, Goat-like. So if you hear this, Malgorzat, I'm sorry I didn't interview you, but I hope I can do that another time, because it's very interesting with people coming from outside, falling in love with a person who has been in Jehovah's Witness, and try to hear their story, and why you, for example, Malgorzat, you are also using your time to protest in a friendly way against the Watchtower organization. But enough talk. Here's the result with my interviews at the regional convention, and I hope you enjoy. And this is the Royal Stage Assembly Hall. No, it's not an assembly hall, but it's in Hillerød, north of Copenhagen. and that's where the Jehovah's Witnesses in the Zealand area, Copenhagen area, are having their assemblies. I think there can be about 3,500, 4,000 people in there. Goat-like are showing their goat-like personality. You have here UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, and Lara showing the hashtag all religions must respect human rights. And maybe I can start talking with you a little bit, Lara. Sure. Sure. When people are thinking about Jehovah's Witnesses, they think they are very nice people, they are very quiet, they are following the law, they are good citizens and so on. How can you stand here with a sign saying that they are not respecting human rights?
That's a really good point, because I thought the same thing myself 6 years ago. Even though I left when I was 19, I thought they're law-abiding people, they're nice, they're just a bit weird. And it was when I read the Royal Commission advertisement in an Australian paper, I cut out the newspaper and took it home, and I thought about this and I realised, wow, I was in a cult. They actually are very unlawful. So, for example, they break laws about security in the car park, they break laws about health, privacy, they break laws about covering up child abuse. They're actually incredibly unlawful, which I didn't realise. And I've realised that by reading a lot of the social media sites and hearing people's stories, one of the reasons I'm here is to ensure that there's exposure of these things, because I believe that first we need exposure and litigation to force them to become lawful, and only after exposure through the media and litigation through the courts and prosecutions will we have reform. What we notice is that Jehovah's Witnesses are not reforming quick enough. They are remaining steadfast in their unlawfulness, and I don't think it's very Christ-like. So my position here is to share information about that Australia had a Royal Commission, to share the numbers from the Royal Commission, and to tell people here in Denmark that I've come all this way to share that information with them.
Okay, we're trying here to get a little bit away from the wind and the noise from the cars, and here is Stephen on Thank. And I just asked Stephen if it's his real name, like Lara's name is Kaput. So it sounds like you are two apostates. One is unthankful for the Jehovah's Witnesses, what they've done, and the other one want to destroy them. Or what is it, your real names?
It is my real name. It's English, originally from France.
Okay.
And Lara's name is Kaput.
Yeah.
And that is her real name too.
Okay, so we got that straight. Fine. And now it's the third and last day of this convention in Hillerød in Denmark. How has it been for you, this experience, if you compare to, for example, Sweden?
In Sweden, we were able to set up our banners and our interaction with the public right in front of the main entrance to the stadium there. Here in Denmark, we were allowed to set up our banners and our protest outside of the arena on the nature strip in the front. We were given that concession. So for that, we're very appreciative. That was the main significant difference between the two. One, we were right amongst the Jehovah's Witnesses. In Sweden, Denmark, we were on the edge. So we had to adopt a different strategy for interaction. So we got little signs that we could hold up to the cars as they arrived or left the convention, or for the people that were walking to the bus stop, and then some of the girls would write messages on the pavement in chalk, which wash out when it rains.
Yeah, of course. You wrote a lot of chalk. Your website, for example, the JW Leaks that you have had for now over 10 years.
That's correct, yeah. jwleaks.org was established in 2012, and it operated for a number of years, and then I took a break, and at that time Avoid JW was started up, and that continued to leak documents, and then I resumed my website a few years ago now, and I continue to leak documents, mostly with an Australian connection.
And in that website you can download a lot of JW more or less secretive documents, the Elders Book and so on.
From time to time there are links to where documents like that are available. What I've tried to focus on is documents that are often in the public domain and may be very hard to obtain. For example, in Britain, the Charity Commission publishes the Jehovah's Witnesses charity reports, but they only hold the last 5 years. So I like to make all the previous versions of their annual reports and their financial statements available, and also documents that I obtain from governments under various freedom of information laws. That means I apply to a government organisation for a document under the law, and then it can take months of negotiation, and then they release the document to me, and then I'm able to share that.
That's incredible. And the Watchtower has not been trying to put you down or legally trying to...
There's been a couple of attempts with takedown notices on links, not on actual documents, and that they don't get anywhere. On the JW Leaks Facebook page, they did in the United States obtain a federal court order to compel Facebook USA to provide information regarding my website. But my website is not based in the my Facebook page is not based in the United States. It's based in Ireland. So I don't know how the US laws have jurisdiction over Ireland and Australia.
And over here we have Jonas, a goat-like personality. And let me ask you a question in your own language. Bah, bah.
Bah. Goodbye, little sheep.
How did you come up with the goat-like personality name?
Jehovah Witnesses believe there are two kind of people. You have a goat-like personality or a sheep-like personality. So if you are not a Jehovah Witness, you have a goat-like personality and you didn't need to die in Armageddon. But cults will often tell you have to change the personality because something's wrong with you and something's right with them. So they want you to have a sheep-like personality because then you're easy to control, you follow directions, and you're helpless without your shepherd. So obviously your shepherd wants you to be helpless. It's kind of abusive. But in real life, being a goat is quite nice. They're smart animals, they're peaceful animals. And what Watchtower never mentioned, and I am a goat farmer, so I know this, if there's a fight between a sheep and a goat, the sheep will win because sheep are vicious animal. And if you punch something real hard in the English language, it's called to ram something from a male sheep. You don't call it to buck something.
And also, not only Denmark, you've been to Sweden and Norway, other countries. So how many assemblies have you been to?
Well, I've only protested 4 times, once in Australia in Melbourne, then we went to London for a protest. Last weekend we were in Sweden doing the protest, as you said. But I've been to 8 countries as an activist, meeting with other whistleblowers, meeting with politicians and the government entities, such as the UK Charity Commission. Next week we'll meet with the German Independent Inquiry. So I think it's very important to spread the news, because what we found is, even though we share information on the internet, it makes such a difference when you're personally here speaking to people face to face.
So what do you think about all the Jehovah's Witnesses coming to this assembly? Have you had any response for them?
Yeah, we have. It's actually quite different to Sweden. If I just quickly talk about last week, we were in a big city and there was a lot of interaction between us and them, people asking, how do I know what you're saying is the truth, and exercising critical thinking, which was terrific. Here we're in a smaller area, it's a very quiet sort of city, and there's more distance between us. What we find is people usually come up when we're not protesting, they see our t-shirts. For example, last night we were walking at the palace and an ex-elder saw the t-shirts and came up to us. So we noticed that PMOs like to approach privately, not necessarily in front of everybody. But occasionally someone will come up and ask us what we're doing here and tell us their opinion, and we encourage that.
Do you think that Jehovah's Witnesses, because they've been under pressure, not only from Australia, but in general, the internet destroys cults, is that why they changed their policy in 2019 Watchtower? I think it was from the May issue, that now it's okay to go to the police. Do you remember that article in 2019? Yeah. So now they can say, we changed our policy, but because of the pressure from outside.
I've read that Watchtower, and In discussions with a lot of people, I don't see the viewpoint that they have on that article. They explain to me what the Jehovah's Witnesses have done. This is their new policy. But if you read it and analyse it, they have actually stated that it is people that have snuck in to the congregation that have abused children. They were pretending to be Christians. If there are people that have snuck in and they're pretending to be Christians, then they cannot be disfellowshipped because they were never Jehovah's Witnesses. Yet they're talking about disfellowshipping people that abuse children. So what is it? Is it worldly people or is it people inside? The true answer is it's the people inside, regardless of whether it's within the family or outside of the family. The perpetrators in the majority were members of the congregation. That's why the congregation took control and managed those situations. The May 2019 Watchtower article is deflecting a lot of that information. An example there is, and it translates in most languages, child abuse is a sin against the secular authorities. I've had the privilege of talking to a lot of the secular authorities in my travels recently around the world, and I've asked them where in their laws does it say child abuse is a sin? In what way does the government deal with sin? And it's taken a few seconds for them to look at the article and suddenly click. They realise the article is subterfuge. It's hiding what's really saying. If child abuse is a sin against the secular authorities, then it's the Jehovah's Witness religion that investigates it, because they investigate sin. If the paragraph said it was a crime against the law of the land, then it would be for the government and police to investigate. So I believe they did this deliberately to trick a lot of people into believing there were changes. It's a lot of jumping around, a lot of trampolining, a lot of smoke, a lot of mirrors. Nothing has changed.
So you still think that even though in 2023 that they would not throw dirt on Jehovah's name by going to the authorities if there is sexual abuse in a congregation, do you think maybe there are some that still go to the police even though they should not throw dirt on Jehovah's Witness name or whatever they say about it?
Everybody has the right to report a crime to the police. In fact, the Jehovah's Witnesses procedures state that if a Kingdom Hall is vandalised or even the windows broken, it says to notify the police first, then you notify the lawyers. Why don't they ring the lawyers and the service department to find out what the law says on a broken window? It's money, the financial side. In that situation, and I'm really adamant on this subject, nothing has changed. It's worse now than before. There are mandatory reporting laws in place, and there's been a number of case studies conducted in Australia where the Jehovah's Witness religion is not following the mandatory reporting. They're still not doing it. To say that children have the right to report, to say that parents have the right, the religion doesn't have the right to say that other people have the right to do it, because they've already asserted that right under the law. The religion should be reporting incidents that are reported to them. If the victim is still a child, if they're an adult, that's always their own personal choice. But no, I fear that their use of words was an attempt to make it look like things have changed, when in fact I think they've doubled down and they've made it worse.
That's very interesting. Do you think it's Jehovah trying to stop this interview because it's getting more wind? It's a storm. We're standing in a storm here.
Mate, well, somebody's got to hold back the four winds, and I think a little bit of it's slipping out at the moment. It is windy, yes.
It is.
It's actually blowing around my glasses, and it's making my eyes water, but I have to keep them on because of the sun. So bear with us.
What do you say to some ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that say, but how come that you are protesting? Why is it so important for you? Why can you not just leave it alone, your past, and move on? Why do we have to still talk about against Jehovah's Witnesses?
You don't have to protest if you don't want to. There's no reason to do it if you don't want to. But I think that democracy is a beautiful idea. And in Norwegian we call it legge stein på stein. You put one stone on top of, everyone can bring their own stone, and we build a pyramid. It's called, the Kingdom of Denmark. And politicians don't know how it is to grow up in a cult, but I do. So you can't expect the politicians to fix the problems of this crazy paranoid universe that you have in many sects and cults that violate children's rights. Who's going to speak up for the children? Here I am, send me, send me.
And you came all the way from Australia, and I can see you're still waving to people, smiling at them, even though that you don't agree with the witnesses. How's that?
The reason why I don't agree is because the children are indoctrinated and they're not having their children's rights respected. And the reason why I say that is because in Article 15 and Article 14, you have the right as a child to choose your own religion and beliefs. And the reason why I have an issue with this is because many people are raised in the Jehovah's Witnesses and they really don't have a choice. They have to become a Jehovah's Witness, and this happened to me through elders' coercion. So
and also your parents. But people will say that, well, they can do whatever they want. If you were raised in a Muslim family, you became a Muslim, and if you, isn't it that they're right to raise their children in a religion they believe in?
Yeah, yes, there is that, and I believe that you should be able to believe whatever you like. However, the Jehovah's Witnesses are problematic. They're not a child-safe organisation, and I say this because the Australian National Royal Commission said that they were not a child-safe organisation, and that position hasn't changed. In the Royal Commission, you may be aware that they had 1,800 child abuse victims. They now have a national redress scheme. The Jehovah's Witnesses have not said sorry.
And the redress scheme is some kind of compensation for the people, for the survivors.
That's correct. So the redress scheme is made of 3 parts. It's called the National Redress Scheme, or NRS. The 3 parts is compensation, mental health benefit of about $5,000 to support mental health, and the third component of this national redress scheme is for a direct personal response, essentially an apology.
And how many out of the 1,800 has got this apology? Yeah,
that's a good question. So far we understand that nobody has received the apology, and only 2 out of the 1,800 have received their compensation component. So really it's a big failure of the institution to, 1, acknowledge that they have caused harm, and 2, to apologise for that.
Because I know you're behind a lot of leaks and so on, and other people are using it. I don't think you get enough credit for all your work you do, but I encourage everybody to go in and check your website. But I saw you sitting inside the assembly hall and writing something on your website. It's a big job. But what are the recent news that you think it's important to check up on?
Something that, and it's what we discussed, it was in New Zealand, which is just off the coast of Australia. They've got a Royal Commission there, and the New Zealand Royal Commission is looking into the Jehovah's Witnesses and child abuse within the religion. The religion is claiming there is no child abuse. So when the Royal Commission started looking into them in 2019, the Jehovah's Witnesses set up a brand new corporation, and they registered as Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses Australasia. And then that new company registered with the Australian Taxation Office as trading with the business name Jehovah's Witnesses. But so too are a lot of other companies trading as Jehovah's Witnesses. So that creates this conflict of who are Jehovah's Witnesses. But in this instance, this new company started dealing with the New Zealand government and the Royal Commission. They stated that they represent Jehovah's Witnesses in New Zealand. And recently they launched a High Court case against the New Zealand Royal Commission to stop them looking into child abuse in the Jehovah's Witness religion in New Zealand, keeping in mind the church says, or the Jehovah's Witness Church says, there is no child abuse. So this is a very interesting situation. An Australian company is trying to stop the New Zealand government looking into a New Zealand church religion faith that has no child abuse, but does. And is represented by a company that trades as Jehovah's Witnesses, but they're not the Jehovah's Witnesses in New Zealand, and they're not the Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia, and they're not the Jehovah's Witnesses on the governing body. Who are they? In actual fact, we were able to track that down. And I did a few years ago put on JW Leaks documents relating to it. Jehovah's Witnesses in Australia are just a handful of men that are not part of the Watchtower Corporation that are the directors of this company. This company only exists on paper. It only exists when they get together and have a boardroom meeting. It doesn't do anything else. It is not a charity. It is not a basic religious charity. It is just a company. And one of the first things that this company did, and a lot of people will remember this, was they issued a letter to all the elders in Australia to destroy all of their notes and records in relation to disfellowshipping, which included child abuse matters. When the media questioned this new corporation on the matter, they said it was the instructions were issued in line with their record-keeping policy. But this was a brand new company. They have no records yet. They haven't done anything to have records. So this new company was used as a front to destroy evidence, destroy records, and then to pretend to be something they're not. And we're slowly working through that. That's myself and Lara. We're getting through it, and it's very revealing.
It sounds like you consider Jehovah's Witnesses a dangerous religion.
Yeah, I do. I consider them dangerous for many reasons. So a couple of reasons why I consider that is because there is a high incidence of poverty, there is a low incidence of tertiary education, there's a high incidence of child sexual abuse, and there's also high domestic violence. And you may be aware that many people commit suicide, and this is something that hasn't been carefully documented. For example, also they don't believe in blood transfusions, and they're undemocratic because their members aren't allowed to vote. I think there's many reasons not to become a Jehovah's Witness.
But some of them, they really look happy. So
that's true.
You're talking about like it's abusive and it's in a very negative way. It looks like they're happy.
Yeah, I agree 100% that they look like that, but it's a facade. And the reason why I say that is because I left at 19. I'm now been out for 30 years, and I did not realize I was in a cult. Now, the way that I realized I was in a cult was going back to what's called the BITE model: behavioral control, information control, thought control, emotional control. I thought they were nice people, just a bit weird, but actually it's a cult. And I think that's very dangerous, because these people who are pretending they have the best life ever, probably they'll join us here next year.
And not only are you standing here and protesting with the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, you also have your own YouTube channel for many years.
Goat-like personality, because my dream is to be a full-time children's rights activist, and I'm actually quite good at it. A lot of people say you cannot protest outside a convention because you will trigger their paranoia, but we do it in a very peaceful way. It's my concept is, and we are allowed to go inside. We have a very good working community with the Jehovah Witness elders and the police and the owners of the stadium. This is my 9th protest, so I'm getting more and more experience, so I know how to do it. I will have 2 more protests this year, maybe one in Poland 2 weeks from now, but at least 2 more in London. And those that say you shouldn't protest, they always say the same, that no Jehovah Witnesses will read your signs, or you will just trigger their paranoia, or they will feel persecuted. And I understand why someone that grew up in the cult would say that, because I would say that earlier. But I can tell you're wrong if you say that, because they do read our signs, they do talk to us, and especially young people, they hide among the bushes and take pictures of us. And there was a kid that came up and spoke to us. He was very aggressive, like Jehovah Witness aggressive, not real aggressive, but he said, why are you lying about the Jehovah Witnesses? And I show, can you point out one thing I'm lying? And, my sign I'm having now, it's just say European Convention of Human Rights or UN Convention of the Rights of a Child. So it's not even a statement, so it's technically not possible to lie unless you're making a statement. It's like saying the sky. If I would say the sky is blue, that could be a wrong statement, but just saying the sky can never be wrong. Anyway, and he came many times, and what he did in the end, he asked us, how can I check that what you're saying is true? So that is critical thinking. And if you want to give a gift to a child, what could you give them? Well, if they need food and water, that's a beautiful thing to give them. But a Jehovah's Witness child do have food and water, but they never learn critical thinking skill. So that child asked, he walked in circles around us and came time and time and asked more questions. But the last question he asked was, how can I check if what you're saying is right or wrong? So he learned critical thinking skills. And we didn't really tell him anything like your religion is wrong or anything. It's just our existence is provocative to them. Because we're peaceful, we're friendly, we don't look down. There was an elder trying to do a staring contest with me yesterday, like, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I'm like, I'm not ashamed of myself. And eventually he left because he couldn't win a staring contest.
Did he actually say you should be ashamed of yourself?
No, that's my interpretation. He did the elder stare. And if I would have been in disfellowship, well, I am a disfellowship person, but if I would have been ashamed of myself wanting to come back, I would look down at my shoes and he would feel good about himself because he could humiliate a fellow human being. But, I don't really care about their rules. Technically, I'm disfellowship, but I don't care.
We heard about that. I haven't spoken to Jonas about it, but he demonstrated 4 years ago, and this year he's demonstrating with his brother, and 4 years ago he didn't even say hello to him.
Yeah, I remember that because I've been friends with Jonas from the time that we had a London protest and we spent some time together, and he was so sad about not having a relationship with his brother and his sister, who lives in Sydney actually. And it's so nice. I met his brother Victor. Yesterday we were going for a walk nearby and we met an elder who was so pleased to be able to see our t-shirts, which we brought from Australia. It recognised us as people he could speak to openly and without having to keep secrets. So it's really nice. We know 2/3 of Jehovah's Witnesses leave. So if you have a look around the car park, you might see several hundred cars. I mean, a couple of hundred cars will be gone from here in a few years.
You can see it all the way down the building, and then to the right, that's where the entrance is. Just tell a little about the rules. Why are you standing so far away? What are you allowed to, and who decides what you are?
Yeah, we are very respectful. So when we plan a protest, we check up in Norwegian we call it økonomisk kartverk, the economical map, because just because there's a sidewalk does not mean it's public land. It might, normally a sidewalk will go all the way up to an arena, and this is the case here. So we spoke to the people who own the arena, and they say we're allowed to protest, but we're not allowed to protest inside the arena. And that's okay because it's not public land. The Jehovah Witnesses rent it. So just like if you rent an apartment, it's your apartment, and no one can go in there and say, I have freedom of speech in your living room. Your living room is your living room. So we're respectful. But that also means that when we're respectful, they are often kind of respectful back because they want to look good, and also because they made a lot of government documents that says that apostates are allowed to come to the Kingdom Hall. So they can't really throw us out without potentially getting legal problems. So yesterday I went there and said, I'd like to go in and hear the word of God. And a friend of mine, I still see him as a friend, he's a Jehovah Witness attendant. He came with me and we were standing there listening to the program together. And we do not make any problem or ballade, like they say in Danish. So we're allowed to go inside, we're allowed to use the toilet, but we do not wear our t-shirts.
That's my question. You are not allowed to enter with that t-shirt, I escaped from the Jehovah's Witnesses. So what do you change?
Yeah, I changed, and most of us have this t-shirt, so the agreement we have that this is not even okay to turn around inside out, because the color is still the color. But other t-shirts we have with apostate slogans, if we turn them inside out, they will just be, so I have one of my apostate t-shirts are green. I turn it inside out and I can walk in. So what I would do now, if I would enter the hall, I would turn my t-shirt around. I would not have any flag. They told us, the owners, they said, you know, if you walk in with posters, we will call the police. And they're right to do that. It's their property, you know. My right runs until they meet their right, and that's the right of property owner. So that's okay.
So you're just standing here outside and waving for them when they're driving or coming by, but there are not so many at the moment outside.
No. We normally take a break during when they have a break, we take a break. So Jehovah Witness convention is fun. It's part of my culture. I used to be Jehovah Witness. I have got a lot of good memories. So we go outside, we protest, we wave, we look at the sisters, you know. That's what you do at the convention. You look at the pretty sisters, you wave at the old ladies, you're nice. But then when they go into the boring indoctrination, when they listen to, they actually sit down, sleep with their eyes open while listening to an echoing voice, that's hypnotic. And that's why you often go home from the convention and say, I don't remember what they were talking about, but I feel a strong urge to give more of my time to Watchtower. That is because it's hypnotic. You don't remember what they say, but you feel the urge to do something. But while they go into the hypnotic stage, we go to a pub or a bar or order a pizza or something like that. So we're having fun, and a lot of people are scared the first time they protest. They don't know how the witnesses will react. Some witnesses can be abusive. I've been assaulted once and threatened many times. But
how do you mean you've been threatened? By these loving, caring people?
Yeah, most of them are super nice and super loving. But like once I was protesting outside a convention in Melbourne, Australia, and I was walking and all of a sudden I was kicked from behind. I turned around and say, excuse me, because you know, you don't expect someone to hit you, and he grabbed my camera and then he sucker punched me. And run away, and I said, you saw that? That guy assaulted me, I'm going to press for charges. And then I saw the Jehovah Witnesses, all of them, because I was in the crowd, and all of them were like, really sad. So I thought, you know, this is where I can do a good witness. So I technically lied because I'm not a Christian, but I said, no, wait, I'm still a Christian, I forgive him, I will turn the other cheek. And all the witnesses surrounding me, they pat my shoulder and said, good for you, good for you. Because I don't want to ruin their, you know.
But that's not
like Christmas, you know.
I know, but it's not a normal behavior for you.
No,
maybe he was a Bible study.
No, he was a Jehovah Witness with the sign and everything. And his wife dragged him away, and she was like, not again. And his child thought it was very awkward, and he was not a good witness, but he was a witness. But what I want to say, you have to remember that convention for them and for me to a certain extent, that's kind of like our Christmas. It's a part of our culture. So when this thing happened, I could have, you know, pushed for charges, but instead I could just turn the other cheek, act like a Christian. I'm not a Christian, but act like a Christian. You don't need to be a Christian to act like a Christian. No. And forgive him. And it was a good experience for all the Jehovah's Witnesses and for me, and it was an awkward experience for his child and his wife. He was an idiot. But normally when witnesses are threatening, they will just walk up and say, you will die in Armageddon, because I'm carrying a sign that says UN Convention of the Rights of a Child. Obviously, such a person deserves to die. It's such a ridiculous religion.
I'm very impressed by your work, and you told me earlier that you saved up some money before you were a contract and so on, and that's why you're taking almost all your time exposing Jehovah's Witnesses. And some people also, they ask me sometimes, because I use a lot of time on my podcast too, why can't you just leave it alone? Now you left it. Why are you using so much money traveling on the other side of the world and so on? Leave it alone. You are part of Jehovah's Witnesses, but on the other side still.
When I was a child at the age of 12, I was abused within the religion. I was abused in an institutional setting. I was abused inside a Jehovah's Witness assembly hall by a leader of Jehovah's Witnesses. They are denying that anybody can never have been abused inside an institutional setting. That means they're calling me and what happened to me as false, and they're dismissing it. For years and decades, I've sought meetings with the people to discuss this and sort about it. They've refused. And I have done a lot of my activism work with the circumstances surrounding my abuse and the events on that day as my driving force. I would like them to acknowledge that the abuse that I went through happened. I would like them to say sorry. And that's very healing for me, to receive that apology. One of the things that I've given in interviews in Australia and other countries is my reaching out to the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. I would like a meeting with them. I would like to discuss. I have a lot of things that they need to know about, things that are happening in Australia that they may not be aware of, things that are happening in the United Kingdom that they may not be aware of. If they are aware of these things, then the governing body is clearly a criminal enterprise. But I don't believe they are. I believe at this point in time they're being misled by the people that are representing them in different countries. This needs to be cleaned out. This needs to be stopped. And in my personal situation, my driving force is to continue until I get my apology, until they sort out what happened to me. I had an initial driving force of I lost my father because I was doing activism work. He shunned me.
For how many years?
About 15 years he shunned me, and last year he had an accident.
So did you ever get to say goodbye to him?
I never got to say goodbye to him. He had fallen off a building and he was unconscious and taken to hospital. And he laid in hospital in emergency treatment for about 4 or 5 days before he passed away. Then some time passed and he was cremated. Then they had a funeral service for him. I was not told any of this. My father was lying in hospital fighting for his life. The Jehovah's Witnesses knew. My family, who were Jehovah's Witnesses, knew. None of them reached out to me to let me know my dad was dying, to even let me visit him. I wanted to be able to show to my dad that the governing body and the faithful, discreet slave that they represented acknowledged the wrongs that they'd done and were moving forward. I never got to say goodbye to my dad. They took that away from me, and they deny these sorts of things happen. They deny that there's shunning. That's not fair. People are hurt, people are cruel. But in my situation, the cruelty went further. My father was also shunning my brother and my brother's 5 children. None of them are disfellowshipped. None of them are disassociated. They stopped going to the Jehovah's Witnesses congregations because of the lawlessness. They were not complying with child protection laws. And particularly in that instance, working with children laws and mandatory reporting. You can't attend a Kingdom Hall if you're aware that the elders are committing criminal offences. You become a sharer. So they stopped going and they waited for the elders to visit them. They never turned up. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. No shepherding calls, no nothing. So my brother and his children, which are my dad's grandchildren, they were never told about his accident. These are kids. The youngest one at that time was 9 and they went up to the age of 20. They were never told, but they have memories. The older ones have memories of their papa, but they never got to see him. And for the last 10 years. So that level of cruelty and that shunning, it's very important to know that the Jehovah's Witnesses are denying these things occur, but if members of the congregation are doing it, then those members are sinning against the teachings of the religion, and they then need to be shunned for failing to follow, of which shunning doesn't exist, which creates a whole circle of
Back to theocratical warfare.
Yeah.
It's very touching to hear that, and you're not the first one to tell your story. And I just want to say, and I need to say that to Lara too, that all my respect for your great, great work, and I know thousands of people have been helped through your work. So
we hope so.
Yeah.
I hope they've learnt from some of the positive things I've done, but I also hope they get to learn from some of the mistakes I make. because I'm not a lawyer, yet the courts in Australia have allowed me to prosecute cases. And really, I have no idea what I'm doing most of the time. I'm fortunate in that the other side, the Jehovah's Witnesses, also don't have an idea of what they're doing. So it sort of balances itself out. But yeah, some of the mistakes I've made in procedures or pursuing things with the correct motive have been really wrong. And it's the only person though that it has hurt or affected has been myself. And I learnt from that, and I still make the mistakes and get a little clip across the ear, or Lara might correct me on that. That's good, that's okay.
But at least you admitted there are other people inside the religion who would never admit making a mistake. Let's end it here, Stephen, and I wish you a good trip. From now on, you're going back to Germany maybe, or what?
We're in Denmark now, we're heading over to Sweden, and then we're travelling north up into Norway.
Okay.
And then Lara and myself are going to take a holiday.
I think you deserve it. Okay, thank you for talking to you, Stephen.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure.
Cheers.
Is it on purpose that you are being so kind and waving and singing for them, Jonas?
Yes, I'm waving and I'm singing, and the funny thing here is that a lot of people are waving back. It was like every car was waving back, so I asked this YouTuber here to film me and we could talk about it, and as soon as he showed up, they stopped waving because he's ugly as shit.
Thank you, Jonas. I hate you too.
No, but you know how it is. So we were in a row and everyone was waving, and as soon as he showed up, there's less waving. You know, Americans call it to jinx something. I told them, look, everyone is waving, everyone is smiling to us. Let's film it. Bang, they're gone. So
I'll take it on my shoulders. It's my fault. Maybe they're coming back. There's still a lot of cars left on the parking lot. So they are talking, they're having a good time down there. And do you envy them?
Maybe it's something to do with Smurfs. No, I don't envy them because I live a life of freedom. I do envy the feeling of having all the answers in the universe. That's a good feeling when you're a 12-year-old boy. But as a grown-up, if I would walk around telling people that I know everything because I have the truth, and this truth must be defended, and the feeling of being a 12-year-old that have the answer to everything, that's a great feeling. But I'm no longer 12-year-old. I'm a grown-up, and I know there's more than one thing that can be true at the same time. Jehovah's Witnesses never understand it because they don't want to understand it. But war and peace are the same thing. You like one of them, you hate another one of them. But both of them are true. One is terrible, one is good. And now I'm not envy. I talk too much, sorry. But I don't envy them.
I know.
So happy.
They're waving. Oh, that's so nice.
We are not protesting against the Jehovah's Witnesses because Jehovah's Witnesses are humans. So all of my protests focusing on human rights, that means we're protesting pro the Jehovah's Witnesses. I was planning a protest in Czechia, and then Corona happened. So,
like you said also before, that it's like protesting against the government of North Korea, but not against the Koreans themselves.
If you protest against, that's one of my talking points. I explained it to the witnesses, they understand it. It goes like this. If you protest against Korea, you don't protest against the Koreans. And when we protest here, we don't protest against the Jehovah's Witnesses as individual or as a group. We protest against the Watchtower violating the human rights of children growing up among the Jehovah's Witnesses. So we're protesting pro the Jehovah's Witnesses, but we're protesting against the human right violation of the governing body. And if you're a Jehovah's Witness, there's really no reason why you should violate human rights. You could have a thriving religion and believe whatever you want to believe without violating the rights of others. There's an element of hypocrisy when you say that the government of Denmark should respect your human rights, and you say, however, the congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses should not respect the human rights of their members. Because if a person wants to leave the Catholics and become a Jehovah's Witness, he should be allowed to do that. But if a Jehovah Witness with no consequences, and if a Jehovah Witness want to leave the Jehovah Witness and become a Catholic, he should be allowed to do that without shunning or orchestrated consequences. So it should go both ways.
So do you think that Jehovah's Witnesses, because of the internet, because of your activism and your websites and all that, do you think they're going down, and how long time will it take for them to vanish from this earth?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they'll ever vanish. We know that new cults continue to be created, but the Jehovah's Witnesses in this form I don't think will exist. And the reason for that is because they need to go through reform. And I believe, I've said previously, that first of all you must have awareness, and that's what we're doing here. Next, you must have litigation. They must be prosecuted for their crimes. And thirdly, that creates reform. What we have not seen enough of in the Jehovah's Witnesses is reform. We're seeing that in other places, but the Jehovah's Witnesses are taking too long to reform. In doing this, they may non-reform themselves out of existence. They need to change.
Especially the policy about shunning.
Yes. The policy about shunning, I think, is what hurts people the most. And oftentimes this is what we speak to either the media or politicians or the public about. And really, it's quite incredulous. You feel like you're in isolation in North Korea. A lot of people learned during COVID, when they had to be locked up, what it feels like to be isolated. Now we can take that experience of COVID and say, well, I've been in that position for 30 years. Can you imagine? You get less for murder.
Yeah, so that's it. That were my interviews with these nice people from Norway and Australia. And Margosat is from Poland, I think. And I have to say also that they also mentioned that in Sweden, and also the day before in Denmark, there were other people also attending. So it was not only these 4 people, there were also some other joining them. But mostly it was them and doing all that hard work. And I think I commemorate that job they have, and they do that for helping people. They're not doing it because they want to be famous or they want to have money or what say you. So it's a very good thing. Yeah. Okay. I hope I can do some other videos also in English, maybe another time if you would like to. Maybe to hear my story, or maybe I can tell the rest of the world how life is as a Jehovah's Witness in a Scandinavian country like Denmark. Yeah. That's it. Bye for now.